Give him a big round of applause. He's playing all vinyl, y'all. Thanks, Jason. And I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Jason and his role here with the board and the city of Houston and our music, industry in a bit. But also want to thank some folks that are here with us. We have Director Nicole Irvin with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. She's in the back. Can you please wave, Nicole? Thank you. And we also have the Miller Outdoor Theater Director, Claudia, is it De Velasco? Also here with us. So thank you for joining. Really quickly, if you don't already know, I'm Gracie Chavez. I've probably got some folks kind of, in here because of the music and, fan base maybe that we've had over the years, playing here and there around town, around Texas. But more recently, I've taken on the music officer role for the city of Houston. So I'm here to represent the Office of Cultural Affairs and its support for the work in music for the city of Houston, which I'm really, really proud of. And thank you guys all for taking your Sunday, St. Patrick's Day, hope everybody's wearing green, to be here with us, because this is just the beginning of these types of conversation about strengthening the music industry for the city. But this work doesn't happen, on its own. It takes a team, as they say. And if it wasn't for the music board, the Houston Music Advisory Board, that has been really, really dedicated over the last 2 years in the work that we've begun here at the city. I want to make a quick introduction. As you all met just a few moments ago, Jason Woods, he is also our board chair. So really, really happy to continue the work with him as he moves in different spaces and lets people know about the great work that's happening here in the city. Also have to my right some of our board members. There's Marissa Sines. She recently joined the board in November. She's the owner of Rucas Cultura and a festival producer and in the multicultural space. So let's give her a big round of applause. We also have Tracy DeJarnette. She's our board secretary. She also is the founder and director for Songfest and also a talent buyer here in the city. So again, big round of applause for her contribution is here as well. And recording, performing artist, producer, Drea Thornton, who is now our board treasurer. We're putting her to work. Big round of applause for her as well. In case I missed anybody, I'll make sure to note it before the end of the evening. But without further ado, I really do want to give you guys a quick introduction to the person that has galvanized this event for us to congregate here tonight. Some folks may know him as Dr. Shain Shapiro, but we simply know him as Shain Shapiro. He's one of the world's leading music and cultural policy thinkers. He's the founder and chairman of economics consultancy Sound Diplomacy, founder and director of the global nonprofit Center for Music Ecosystems, and the author of This Must Be the Place, How Music Can Make Your City Better. Shain's pioneered the work of over 120 music cities across the globe and music ecosystem policy, where music is written into how cities and places plan and invest in their future. So let's give Mr. Shain Shapiro a big round of applause.
Thanks, Gracie. You want me right here? All right. Hi. This listening space is amazing. I think what a wonderful place to be introduced to your wonderful city. Thank you so much for having me. So yes, as Gracie said, my name is Shain. I'm from London, despite how I sound. I promise. I grew up in Canada, and despite living in the UK forever, this is how I sound. I don't know why. I just wanted to tell you, so I wanted to tell a little bit of a story. And then we're going to have a few, I guess, of the board members and experts from the city come up and join me for a conversation. So just before I do that, this book came out in September last year. And this is, I believe, my 45th show, going to 45 different cities, 14 countries now, doing this, having conversations in cities about music and why it matters. And every single place that I go, I'm just completely overwhelmed at how important music is to that city. It doesn't matter where you are, music matters. But it also makes me realize how undervalued music is in communities. And there's a reason for that. And I thought that the best way to tell that is to kind of give you a brief introduction to why I got into all of this. So, I think that's the air conditioner, which is good. We don't have air conditioners in the UK, so I welcome any place with an air conditioner. I think so. Most people who work in the music industry tend to make a conscious decision to work in the music industry, right? I'd say in more general, people want to do it. I never did. I never had a choice. Since I was 15, I've been working in the music industry. I got a job at one of my local music venues. I was not allowed to get that job because of my age, but I had a fake ID. And I couldn't afford to go to see all the shows that I wanted to go to, so I decided to get a job as a cleaner, collecting glasses and sweeping floors. And after school, I went and I worked, and then I took the night bus home. And the guy who booked the venue was taken ill about 4 months later. And the owner of the venue, he kind of noticed that I was one of the only people who was really taking interest in the music, because I was kind of strategically working the shifts of the bands that I wanted to go see. So he turned to me, I remember I was 16 years old, and he said, well, why don't you book it? So when I was 16 years old in high school, I was booking a 400 capacity music venue in Toronto, Canada, spending about $30,000 to $40,000 a week, all cash, to give you a good understanding of the type of venue this was. The venue is now like a CVS, unfortunately. But and then that started kind of my love affair in a way with music and working within music. I never really thought that I was ever going to be doing anything specific to music. It just kept happening. And in all of the different jobs that I've had, and before I set up Sound Diplomacy, I've done virtually everything in the music industry, not well enough in any way. Like, I worked at a record label, I ran festivals, I poorly managed bands, I played in a band that was even worse. And I'm the only one, by the way, of our band that is not a professional musician now. Just to put it into perspective of that's why we were terrible. It's because of me. And every place that I've gone and everywhere that I've been, I've realized that there's this fundamental misunderstanding with how we understand, in its most basic level, how music works. right? Because music is, I think it's the closest thing to magic that we're ever going to come across. And most people, when they're listening to music, they're not thinking about everything that's going on behind the scenes, right? Whether you're at a gig or you're at a festival or you're listening to music in the car or on Spotify. And I liken it to the same way that we treat water, right? When we turn on the tap at home and we drink water, or I'm drinking some water here, I'm not thinking about how that got to me. I'm not thinking about all the infrastructure, all the pipes, all the filtration, the sanitation. A whole lot of things have to happen for this moment to happen. And clean water is only important if you don't have it. So when most people's experience of music is the experience in the moment, it's the experience of listening to that song or the experience of listening to that gig, then what happens is what I call this kind of development of the ignorance of ubiquity. Is the more ubiquitous music becomes, the more we completely ignore, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but we completely ignore all the systems and all the processes that get it to us. And when you translate that into how we decide to make decisions about what we invest in communities, what do we care about? Where do we care? Who do we care about? These are big decisions that we're all making every day in cities, because cities are just, to me, it's just decisions over and over and over again about how to best allocate the resources that we have, right? I find that music is rarely incorporated in those decisions. So, for example, building an apartment building right next to a music venue, and then people want to move to that apartment building because it's in a vibrant area, and then they have a kid, and then they don't want to be in that anymore. And that to me is not a music problem, right? That is how we understand music's role in communities, how we understand how music works in its most basic level and why it matters. So when I started doing this job, when I started Sound Diplomacy, and if you haven't heard of us, that's totally fine. We work all over the world really trying to get non-music people to understand why music matters. That's the simplest way to do it. And now we do it in other art forms and disciplines as well, film and theater and others. But I'm the music guy. And the more that you start to explain that supply chain and you start to say, well, have you thought of it the same way that you think about water, right? That music is not a natural resource, that music has to be created, that, a guitar started out as a tree, for example, right? And you start to see that most of the decisions that are made in our communities, music does not have a seat at the table, right? There are very few strategic plans that cities issue. Most cities have them. I'm sure that very few of us read them. They have big buzzwords in there like resilience and sustainability. But music tends to not feature in any of them. Sometimes culture doesn't feature in any of them. But one of the big challenges, of course, when it comes to how we incubate music is the infrastructure required to do so. So if we don't have a seat at the table, so imagine a bunch of planners and elected officials are sitting around a table in Houston or in any other city deciding what do we care about, what do we prioritize, what do we focus on for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Especially how do we focus on these things whilst dealing with major structural issues like climate change, like inequality, like healthcare, all of these other things. If music doesn't have a seat at the table, then music doesn't have a voice. Then music is just a utility. It's not an economy. It's just that thing that happens after the important stuff, right? It's what we do to have fun, yet it's not work. And this gets exacerbated because most communities do not build data to understand music. How much is music worth in Houston in its totality? How many jobs? How many jobs in comparison to other sectors, right? For example, what are those jobs? Who has those jobs? Where are those jobs? All of these things, by the way, you can answer if you want to. But because we don't build these data sets, then I always say we're making kind of, policy-based evidence making rather than evidence-based policy making. So I think that there's a different way. And that's what this book is about. So this book is 10 years of me essentially failing upwards, is the best way to put it. Is when I started doing this work, first off, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And I had no understanding of how to articulate the problem. And what I have learned is that when there's a problem with music in communities, in one way or another, whether it's artists not being fairly compensated, in whatever definition you want, or a festival goes out of business, or a music venue goes out of business, or God forbid there's a health and safety issue, which I know has happened here. We tend to think of a solution to that. We tend to think of a music problem with music-based solutions. The solution to inequity of musicians is to pay them more. Well, yeah, sure. We should also pay nurses more, and teachers more, and first responders more. Or we need more festivals. We need more venues. I'm not saying we don't. Maybe. But this is thinking of music as a hammer, and everything is a nail, right? The solution to music is music. I have learned, doing this for 10 years, that we need to think about it differently. And this is what I'm hoping that Houston also does. If we thought music more as a nail in search of many hammers, and what I mean by that is, let's ask some different questions. So how do we create sustainable, non-extractive jobs that AI isn't going to take away? We're trying to figure that out. How do we create positive community-based tourism so people come here and actually learn about Houston as it really is? How do we stop people from killing each other? How do we promote our health and improve our well-being, right? How do we provide better educational opportunities? How do we address systemic racism? I'm not saying that music is the solution to any of those things. Obviously, it's not. But it's part of the solution to all of those things. And if we build a data and evidence base to understand, literally and figuratively, understand how music works. So that means, where is it? Literally, where is it on a map? How many businesses? How many venues? How many recording studios? How many music teachers? How many churches with music? And so on. All of this stuff that can be done. Then we have the data to start to articulate how music can be incorporated into how we address and solve bigger problems. What that means is music becomes more important in communities because it needs to be more important in communities because it's part of a bigger issue. And that is what I have learned over the years from working in London. So I've worked in major big cities. I worked in the mayor's office in London for several years on music and nighttime economy policy. But I've also worked in small towns and for global governments like the UN and other acronyms. And I've realized that it all comes down first to intent. Do we care enough to care? If we care about something, then we put resources into it. Not just financial, human beings as well, right? Do we believe that music deserves to be treated as importantly as any other sector? In my 20-minute walk from the hotel to the venue, it was essentially just a monument of oil and gas companies. Every building was an oil and gas company. Clearly, that is an industry that the city takes seriously. That is an industry that the city cares about or has cared about over a long period of time. I'm not speaking in any way politically. That's totally fine. But what the city demonstrates to me is this is a business that it recognizes as a business. This is a business that it understands. This is a business that it puts resources into understanding. Is Houston doing that for music? Maybe, maybe not. Are many cities doing this for music? No, not that many. Oh wow. All right. And just, but what we're seeing with the work of Gracie and the Music Advisory Board is incredibly encouraging, and by the way, deserves to be applauded. This is how change begins in communities. Because I think that a city like Houston has so many different opportunities to incorporate music into how it addresses and builds for the future, right? I think it's fourth biggest city in America. That's a big city. And I get it, coming from London. London is 33 cities. Each of them have their own heads of culture, just to put it into perspective, right? So, and the mayor of London, who sits on top, has convening power. But the power lies in those 33 communities. And I know that in a city of a size like this, you can't do everything all the time. But the first thing to do is to recognize intent and state that it's important. You've done that. The second thing to do is then to really understand how music can be incorporated into how Houston develops, grows, changes, and improves for all Houstonians. Houstonians? Yes, I got it right. Thank you. So, one thing that I have realized in my travels is how incredibly important music still is. And I know we're going to talk about it on the panel. I think I'm going to have the panelists come down in a minute. But COVID, right, is, to me, the best case study we're ever going to have as to why music matters. Hands down, right? In a perverse way, I get that. But it still is. And we are seeing more and more in most cities music becoming more important, right? More tickets, concert tickets were sold in 2023 than in any year ever. More of us are going to see live music than we ever have been. Sure, what kind of music we're seeing and the types of artists that we're seeing may make the industry more like an hourglass than a pipeline. It's the best way to look at it, right? We're buying more tickets at the top to see familiar artists. But when we come out of COVID and we're all really looking at how we need to build our cities for the future, now we have to think about it. I'm seeing more and more cities recognize the importance of music. And more cities recognize that, that we need to build music in to our communities rather than bolt it on. Because I've learned this music is one of the only things, at least for me, that I don't need to live, but I couldn't live without. And yet we don't treat it like we treat oil and gas companies or water or many other different sectors. So I'm hoping that this event is the start of the continuation of a conversation. You've already started it. The continuation of a conversation that begins to look at how we can prioritize music as a key part of Houston's economic, social, and cultural development. And I did say the word economic first because that is the one that you have to get right so that we can get more investment into social and cultural as well. Knowing that we need numbers and we need data. So the way that I've been doing these kind of events, and thank you, Gracie, for agreeing, is after I do a little talk, I always moderate a discussion with experts from that place. So first off, thank you so much for having me in Houston, for letting me kind of introduce the night. And obviously, if you'd like to buy the book, they're for sale out there from Class Bookstore, which is an amazing local bookstore. And I'm happy to sign it, obviously, if you buy it. So I'm going to hand it off to Gracie now to introduce the panelists.
So thank you, Shain. Again, a big round of applause for Shain Shapiro. Also want to note that after the discussion with our Houston and civic leaders that I'm about to introduce, we all are going to hold a Q&A session. So if y'all have any questions, please don't hesitate. This is like exactly why we're here, is to have a conversation. It's not a monologue. So want to hear from y'all. The first person I'd like to call up to the stage, if you will, is Alex Navarro.
Gracie.
Alex currently serves as president of the American Federation of Musicians. Sit here. The local Houston chapter, the Houston Professional Musicians Association. He's a music director at Theater Under the Stars, or you guys might know it as Tuts. And he's also a pianist for the Houston Ballet Academy and a very sought-after freelance musician.
Thank you, Gracie.
All right. And the next person I'd like to call up is Houston's award-winning music producer and artist, Raisin A-Leaf. Who knows about the SWAT? Miss LaNell Grant, come on up. LaNell has worked with artists like Paul Wall, Bun B, Black Thought, Big Crit, A-Leaf raised and Grammy-nominated rapper Toby Nigwe. And her songs, the songs she produced, have also received multiple NAACP Image Awards. Last year, she released her debut solo hip-hop album, I Ain't Gonna Hold You, using her voice to amplify women, faith, and more. This album showcased her signature production sound, and we all know she makes fire beats for other artists, but this time she's doing it for herself, or she did it for herself. And her album brings her lyrical talent front and center. So this month, in fact, next week, you drop your next project. And so the other thing I wanted to know, which I feel is most importantly, she's the founder of Women Produce, an organization committed to championing the creativity of women, specifically in music. Please, another round of applause for Nell. The last person I'd like to bring up is Jacque Gonzalez-Garcia. She's the planning and design manager for Downtown Houston Plus, the family of organizations tasked with enhancing downtown as a connected and thriving place for everyone. Her areas of focus are urban design and planning efforts, and those include small to large projects like installing the bike racks to implementing neighborhood vision plans. Her most recent work includes More Space, Main Street 2.0, a re-envisioning of downtown's main artery as a pass-through to a place. Well, welcome, y'all.
I'm back. Round two. I was going to ask you to introduce yourselves, but that's already been done. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to start with you, LaNell. Yeah, pick on you first.
No problem.
All right.
No problem. Easily picked on.
What, what do you think? Okay, if you had, you could do whatever you wanted with the Houston Music Advisory Council, right?
Okay.
What would be your top priority to focus on as this develops? What would be number one on the list?
Number one on the list is giving Houston, in some way, shape, or form, the very fundamental thing in music that most other major cities have: a place where musicians go to do what musicians do. And it sounds very simple, but when you go to Austin, you expect you know what their music scene is. You know what New York is. You know what LA is. And I mean, surely if LA can do it, we can do it, as sprawled out and as spaced out as LA is. And so my number one chief thing that I would want to implement, and you got to crawl before you walk, so we can't throw up maybe like 5 of them at once, but can we just have one place that musicians come through to do what musicians do, to bring back the rite of passage of musicianship or performance? And all genres, whatever, and even if there are different spots for different genres. But I just think that's maybe the chief thing that the music scene in Houston is lacking, and that we honestly desperately need if we're going to retain our talent, if we're going to retain the giftings of the people that are born and raised here. The main question that I always get asked just came from LA literally 48 hours ago. The question was, when are you moving out here? And it takes a certain resolve for me to say, I'm never moving out here. I don't like you people like that. But I love where I'm from, and the internet is very small. You can't pay me to move. Well, you probably could pay me to move from Houston. You can't pay me enough to move from Houston. I'd rather see it done in my city than for me to take everything that I am and go give it to another city.
So you're talking about infrastructure.
Absolutely.
So it's a good segue to you, Jack. No, well, again, I'm looking at a really quite, to me, lovely, massive downtown, probably full of a lot of buildings that no one's in. And I'm curious, kind of from the downtown development side, how are you guys thinking about, I guess, music, culture, entertainment, as a tool to change and further develop downtown, as it seems more people are moving down here, right?
That's a great question. It really goes back to everything leading through the same vision for downtown, which is creating a downtown that's a downtown for everyone. It's a space that can not only be a residential space, but a place that people work, people come to play and have fun. But as long as everything is going through that same vision and supporting that vision, then we're being successful in what we do. So in a lot of the work that, so we actually manage and activate 2 parks. And in those parks, we always have some sort of live music going on as an activation, because we understand that that's what brings people back. We see that people come and experience those places once, and you might check it off your list, but if there's a new artist or if there's somebody else who's there, then you know it's creating an experience. It's creating a place that you want to go back to, and it has something new to offer each time. So it's really, through all of our projects and all of our work that we're doing, it's making sure that we're reaching a broader audience, and music helps support that, and really just catering events and creating spaces that are for everybody, but also sometimes that are for specific groups of people. We want to make sure that we recognize that. We've done events such as we did one centered around slabs, like the cars, because we know that that's a culture and a type of, it's an event people want to see, and it caters to a specific group, but we know that Houston is asking for those kinds of things, just as much as it's asking for family-friendly stuff as asking for spaces that are supporting everyone.
And I wonder, is there like a city-owned building that is empty right now that we could just turn into a music hub somewhere around here?
That would be amazing.
I wonder, but Alex.
Yes.
I'm gonna kind of ask you a similar question I asked LaNell. Is, I guess you left and you've come back, right?
I have. I'm a native of Houston.
Yeah.
Grew up in A-Leaf, just like Nell, Southwest, and left like a lot of musicians and artists. Left right after high school because, well, to be frank, I didn't find the resources. Well, when you're 18, you're thinking, okay, where do I want to go to school? Most people. And I didn't even find the schools of what I wanted to do. I wanted to do jazz, kind of pop, production. And U of H and Rice are great institutions, but neither of them offered what I wanted to do in music. So I went to school up in Dallas area. After that, moved out to LA and built my career there, and then transitioned to New York and lived there for a number of years and moved back here about 5 years ago. And part of the reason that I moved back was, there's a point in anyone's career, no matter what industry you're in, where what you've accomplished or money or whatever, it's just loses its value, or you're like, okay, what are you doing this for? And it's like, okay, you know what, I want to be home, and you recognize the value of home, of family, etc., cost of living, quality of life. And it's like, Houston is home. New York was great, LA was great, but neither of them felt like home, and I wanted to click my heels together, and no place like home.
So let's I guess my question to that is imagine your 18-year-old self now.
Yeah.
What would be the best thing that the Music Advisory Board could do to ensure that the 18-year-olds now are not leaving?
I have to echo what Nell was saying. If there were a space, because as a high school kid, I was gigging as much as a high school kid can gig. I was doing, maybe some weddings, maybe a party here or there, and I was going to see live music as much as I could, being underage and with the resources I had, but I was seeking it out. And so if there were a place where like that I knew there was live music consistently, and even in the 90s when there was more live music in Houston, it was still thin and not always accessible to me. So something that is accessible to the entire city, to an entire spectrum of demographics, entire spectrum of styles.
If I could hijack his question.
Yeah, please. That means I don't
Because
have-
before I was
don't have
a
to ask
music
them.
producer and an artist, taught for 5 years at Elsick High School as an English teacher. And on my way out, no shade, but on my way out, I made a recommendation for an audio engineering program where kids could get certified in Pro Tools before they even left high school. And, you know, I wasn't qualified enough yet. I think I might be a little qualified now. And it was, okay, try it as an after-school program first. And so if I take his question, like, Nell, what would 18-year-old you have wanted? I wanted the ability to go to my school's studio and just be in there doing whatever you do in the studio, and you don't know what you're doing at that age. But as a teacher, because I seen the no, as someone who's in the industry now, and I can see A-Leaf does a great job of having a CTE program where they have career in technology and different electives like all throughout, but it is completely disconnected from the city. So just like we build other kind of pipelines for our kids, we need to build like pipelines to the schools of performances. We need to build pipelines to the courses in college and the programs. We need to connect the city. There are a lot of cool things happening in isolation, but unless we get unified, like we said earlier, it's a lot of people doing the redundant thing and nobody getting anywhere. And so just an organization of, you know, beyond buildings, just we have an objective to retain our biggest and our brightest. So we have to be competitive. They have to think that it's better to stay here than to go somewhere else, is what I would like add on to that.
Yeah, you nailed it now. Like,
It's yeah. Well, again, it's. Let's extract out for 1 second just a few things. You know, it's the government of the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and the government of Singapore, for example, make AI-based education mandatory from the age of 12. Right? You were that they've invested. So as a 12-year-old, you're learning how to understand your the challenges of AI, right? To build essentially literate people, digitally literate people. And I think music education, someone learning how to play an instrument is fantastic. But then they look at Pro Tools and they're 18 years old and have no idea how it works. And it comes back to education, right? And a lack of understanding the needs of music, maybe. Right?
I think the best things happen when they can be multiple needs for multiple different groups at one time. So we're looking at music in isolation and disregarding our city as the energy corridor. NASA's right down the street. So unless we want to continue to outsource these jobs, like this is Houston, Texas. There's almost nothing that you can't find or you can't do here. That's including the resource of the people and the children that we're rearing. So why aren't we rearing them for the jobs that are literally here? Why are other people taking these jobs more? I say all that to say, if you can learn how to play an instrument or do something in Pro Tools, then you can code. If you can code, then you can do whatever it is they be doing over at NASA. If you could do that, then you can work in the energy corridor. I imagine the same rigor and the same determination and the same know-how and ingenuity and all those things are beneficial. And so I really think it's just a unifying of all of the amazing things.
So I'm going to come back to you, Jackie, now on this, on the your wish list for the future of the Music Advisory Board, and again, not just in a general sense as the downtown development organization. I know it's bigger than it. Where do you see the most important synergies? What would you like to see happen when you go to the Music Advisory Board and ask a question?
A network. That's it. It's creating that connective tissue between the people here and the people there, because I think that's the most important thing you can have is not only who you know, but who knows who and who can connect you back to who you need and who you don't know. So I think if they can serve as a connective tissue and sort of that place to go to whenever you are looking for someone or you don't even know who you're looking for, I think that's the best thing that they could serve as, and the best. It's a hard role to fill, but I think that's the most important role that they could serve as.
Yeah, it's, anytime, we've learned this, anytime you publish a map of something, it's by nature obsolete because tomorrow is different. I've learned that. But I wanted to kind of ask, I as an outsider, I know a lot of the big artists, obviously, from Houston. I'm really excited to learn a lot more. But a lot of communities that we work with, or that we engage with, have this weird struggle between, let's say, preservation and promoting things that happened in the past, versus investing in things that are happening now, like, future heritage. And I think that Houston, as an outsider, needs to shout more about its music heritage than it does. But we do find that cities that just prioritize that sometimes miss the point on other things. And I'm curious what each of you thinks about that, of how Houston can honor the past without fully dwelling on it. And
I don't know if there might be a shortage in physical locations of honoring of culture and music in Houston. But I think it's a known fact, the type of music that we're known for. I think if you're into that, you can name at least 3 to 4 people, Bun B, Paul Wall, you can name the people, you can point out the sound and the things surrounding the sound, so slab culture. So I don't see that as being quite an issue, especially in our city where those people who led and broke that ground are still very prevalent and active. Like Bun B for real down over at Trillburger. Like, you know what I mean? Like Paul Wall really like still out here. Like they're still present and active. They are literally living museums, and that sounded terrible not to age them in that way, but I have personally gleaned so much knowledge because they are still they're in operation. They're doing what they do. They are in whatever level of maturation of their careers. Literally, like not too long ago, sat down with Bun B and getting game about music and like obviously starting and running a business. So I don't think we have a problem honoring our culture. I think that with the new like what we're trying to do new, I just think you need to give way. You need to give way to the new. I think Bun B and Paul Wall and so many of our Scarface, like these people, in my opinion, they don't gatekeep. I haven't seen them do that. They have been more than forthcoming with information. And so it's just finding, and allowing those people that are coming up, hey, to be able to glean from them or whoever and then push that and forward and use that.
yeah. Now, what from a more newcomer perspective, Alex, I guess I know you're from here, but you've only been back for a few years. Do you find an openness here in that sense, or do you see it from a different perspective?
Openness for new artists?
Yeah, and or a focus too much on the past.
I feel like Houston can definitely focus more on celebrating its past. Whether, and Jackie and I were chatting about this, whether it's preserving infrastructure, buildings, this civic history, and celebrating its musical history. At my position as the president of the Houston Professional Musicians Association, our buildings here on the north side. And one of the things I did, we celebrated our 125th anniversary 2 years ago, and I installed this HPMA Legends, where we had everyone from Kenny Rogers, who grew up, in what is now Midtown, Joe Sample, who grew up in Third Ward, Dusty Hill from ZZ Top, so people who've passed on but are from Houston, and talking about Houston sound, that's 3 completely different sounds right there, right? And so celebrating those, and that's something, they all went and had their careers, Nashville, LA, but their sound, as we talked about upstairs, is Houston. They made their sound here. So celebrating the artists and giants that Houston has created, but facilitating that next generation, whatever the sound is, because, as we all agree, Houston, I think, has been brilliant in breeding a sound and breeding talent. Our challenge is maintaining it or retaining it, keeping it here, and facilitating a career, whether they're just, well, I don't want to say just, because this was my career too, a side musician playing behind artist X, or, in this gig or that session or whatever, but, building a career in music or developing to an A-list artist, like Houston has produced.
It feels like we specialize in cultivating people and then sending them away, and they go win championships.
And you know what?
And
And
Super
cultivating is I mean, not to poke a bear here, but is
a sport thing.
Is getting more difficult with changes in different levels of government and also in school district leadership. And so, sorry, but I'm proud to say, like Nell, grew up in public school, and A-Leaf ISD and LSIC did the best it could, and Nell, I'm sure, did this as well, but I tried to extract the most I could out of my public education. And Texas has for the longest time been a strong public education. And I worked in LA in public schools, and wow, night and day. But it starts at this level, with our educators, with our schools, with our school districts, and opening their eyes to art, to music, to letting them see, oh wow, I like playing this, singing this, doing this. There's actually a path, a realistic path to do that, and I think it's that path, that vision is dimming each day.
Music is no different than sports. People worldwide adopt the understanding that you should play a sport, even if you never plan on going pro, or there are just things that playing a sport teaches you. Music is literally no different. It is another discipline that pairs well with child rearing and development. They just should. It's going to make for more productive citizens, citizens that can operate well, who can be diligent, self-starters, initiative. It just pairs well. It should not be a question whether or not it should be a staple in education.
Shain, I'm not sure if I even answered your question about artists, but I was trying to maybe go from the underage, season of a musician.
But it comes back to value, right?
Yeah,
so,
valuing.
and it's something that we talked about backstage.
Yeah,
is again, very, very few people have any understanding of how music works and how people get paid, right? Yes. Just the very basic understanding of copyright, and to me, that's something that there's an educational opportunity there. I always say we always obsess over the word intellectual and forget the word property, right? And I think as well, looking at it from the outside, Houston is, I think, one of the biggest cities to not have a music strategy, right, in the world. Most major cities over 3 million people have between 2 and 6 staff members dedicated to this kind of stuff. And that's fine, again, but then Texas has the best music office in the country, right? So you have the best state when it comes to music. So there's incredible opportunity here, I find, because it's not so much catching up, it's getting ahead, because there's all the raw ingredients are here, right? To put it all together. It's just, I find that it's that question of value. And that's my question to the three of you, is how can we better describe it?
Describe the value?
And how can we better convince? Because it doesn't seem to be working all the time, to convince non-music people that music matters. Is it directly in the school boards? Obviously, I'm not aware of the politics, but is it through workforce development, or is it through tourism, or is it through downtown?
I mean, you've listed it. It's multi-level, in communicating that and preaching that. In my role, we negotiate directly with our leading arts organizations, the symphony, the opera, the ballet, Theater Under the Stars, but then also represent freelance musicians. But in those negotiations with our arts organizations, this is a discussion I was having earlier, is everyone in executive leadership, whatever your industry is, wants to claim that they are diverse, that they are doing this, that they support the arts, that they support education. But then really, what are they doing? What does their spreadsheet look like? How much are they really investing in those initiatives? And it takes advocating to the people who have the power, and whether it's executive leaders, political leaders, and that's something I've been trying to do from my position, is really pushing our executive leaders and connecting with our political leadership and letting them know the priority, that needs to be, that the arts need to be. And it's tough for a lot of them to swallow it. They may not admit it, but because it's such a long investment, it's something that they won't see, definitely not in their term and maybe not even in their lifetime. And so that's tough to okay, I'm going to allocate all these funds, or I'm going to increase the wage scale on this, or I'm going to invest in education, whatever, but I'm out of here in 4 years, or I'm, out of this world and within the next 20, But for a 10-year-old kid who in 20, 30 years might be now the leading professional doing this gig. So it's a tough sell, but it's a sell that needs to be preached.
I think something to also keep in mind is you have to speak the language of the group that you're speaking to. Some people, what that means is speaking economics to them. It's speaking numbers. It's speaking how this is financially makes sense. To some people, it means speaking about culture and how it adds to it. But it's just being cognizant of the audience that you have, really, and who you're trying to sell it to.
I like the range here because that's where he started. That's where you really drove it home. And I literally was gonna say, at the end of the day, it's supply and demand. As creatives and in the arts, we can be very the glass is half full and kumbaya, and I just want to make my art, and the world should see it, and everybody wants to. And really, it's just supply and demand. And you have to force people to want to be a part of the supply and demand. The easiest way to do that in any situation is to start making something pop. When you start making something pop, the city of Houston gonna come knocking because they're gonna want their taxes. They're gonna want their cut. So if something is jumping off over here and so at this building, and these restaurants have decided that this is what we're doing every week, and it's this thing, and then the city, well, hey, what about the parking? All right, well, what about the city of Houston will come knocking? So my viewpoint on it is, as I've grown in wisdom and maturity, the zealous 20-year-old me was like, hey, nah, let's just build it and they gonna do whatever they gonna do. But as I've grown, I understand the need to speak the language. I understand the need for people advocating. And I might not want to schmooze with those people, but there is somebody who can. And finding people who are best fit for the positions and the roles that are for the things that need to be done, and then commissioning those people to do their thing. And so I believe you build it and you make them come. And one of the groups that I think you were hinting at, you said the executives, the political, and then the consumer, the people. What do the people want? Because that's the people that's most important, because executives are going to give most often the people what they want. I remember I was young. My literal household was divided about that light rail. My daddy wanted it because he's techie and he's, future. My mom is low risk. She's, well, what would it do to downtown? And da-da-da-da. My house was literally divided about that light rail, but enough people in the city of Houston wanted it. And so I believe you ask the people what they want, you make it happen, and then you force the people in power to look at the supply and demand of it. And it's so much more beautiful that way, and that is kind of like a model of the independent artist, because by the time you come, I already know a lot. By the time you come to offer your services, now I have more leverage. Now the artist has more leverage. Now the musicians have more leverage, and they don't just have to take what you give people, because when the execs have to begrudgingly allocate those funds, they act like they had to begrudgingly allocate those funds. It's always dangling over your head about the program dissolving and being taken away. But when you are producing a thing and it's advantageous for the city, it's advantageous for the culture, whether they want to or not, they're gonna buy in because supply and demand.
Yeah, I think the word that I've learned to use that makes the most sense to me is translation, right? The music advisory board, all of us, I've learned with me, we're all translators. And the better, it's obviously not just Spanish to English. I mean, it's music to economic development, music to tourism, music to equity, music to land use planning. I guess not here as much, as I learned you don't have zoning. But music, and the better we can translate, the more successful we'll be. But we can only translate not only if we have the language, but we have the data. And the one thing that I have learned is the narrative and the storytelling, right? So we are, as human beings, we gravitate towards stories, right? We gravitate towards being brought into something rather than being told about something. But I have also learned that the more we appreciate a story without data, the more we take it for granted that it's happened. And I think that's, again, we're at this amazing kind of inception period right here. I hear you have a new mayor, right, as of a few months ago? So I've got 2 more questions. Do we have time for? Okay. And I guess to each of you 3, it's a simple question. If you had 20 minutes with him, okay, good. If you had 20 minutes with him, I should know this. I should do my research, but I apologize. 20 minutes with him, what would you ask, each of you? What would be your ask? And it has to be something actionable, not just give me money.
I think my ask would just be listen to the wants of the people, because I think, at least from my perspective, the mayor has been listening. I've been listening to the loudest voices, which isn't necessarily the conglomerate and like the voice of what the people want. So I would just want to make sure that everyone's opinion is actually taken into consideration. All the work that's been done up to this point is considered moving forward. So I would just want to ask him to be considerate of all those effort that has gone into it and what everyone is actually saying and wants.
I would probably say something like, hey, you want some longevity here, don't you? Hey, you want the people to like you, don't you? You want to be seen as the mayor that did the one thing that no other mayor before could do, right? Okay, then revitalize the music culture in Houston. You revitalize the music culture in Houston, and your name will never be smited out. You become synonymous with the growth of the music industry in Houston, and you'll live forever.
All right, you're hired.
I think my message would be to use Houston musicians first. And that's a message I gave to him directly when I met Mayor Whitmire. And a message I gave our outgoing mayor when I first met him a few years back is, Houston is a funny city. I'm proud to be a Houstonian, but Houston does have a second, third, fourth, I guess technically fourth city complex where we want to show that we're as good or this or that as LA, as New York, as Chicago, as Nashville, as even Austin, who's a smaller city, but there's a complex there. But there's not a shortage of money in Houston. There's a lot of money paired with a low cost of living. And so whether it's politically or corporately, Houstonians, people in leadership, flex their muscle by bringing in musicians from outside of Houston. And what a waste. For not using a more colorful word, what a freaking waste. If we're going to build the tallest skyscraper, the best light rail, the best whatever, I mean, I would hope we'd use Houstonian architects, engineers, even the guys laying the concrete. And so if we're doing the arts, why aren't we building the arts with Houston artists? And so that's something I've told Turner and Whitmire. Whatever your musical needs are, selfishly, the Houston Professional Musicians Association. Whatever you need, we have you. Whatever you got going on, whether it's the smallest thing or the biggest thing, celebrate and create a platform for Houston musicians. Damn it.
Three fantastic answers. So I always end these events with something a bit more personal. This is not a question I put in the email, by the way. No. So we're all here because we all have a personal relationship with music, right? When I say the word music, it means something different to each and every one of you. And I know that each and every one of us has those moments of tracks that got us through challenging times in our life or things that synonymize different changes in our life. And the reason I do this, genuinely, is because of what music means to me. And music literally and figuratively saved my life at a time when I didn't have much else. And I always reflect on that and reflect on, why, all I'm trying to do is explain why everyone should care as much as I do about music. But I know that lots of people don't, and that's okay. I just want them to recognize and appreciate it like we appreciate clean water. So my question to the three of you is, I've asked, by the way, every single panelist. I've had over 100 people answer this question. I've had some good answers too. So to each of you, and then we'll go to questions. What does music mean to you?
Yeah, music is everything. Music is everything, and without getting into specifics of personal life, I'll try to surmise it in this: is I'm a pianist, as I've shared, I think. Music has the capacity to communicate where words fail. And I know when I've had, whether the highest high or the lowest low, when I've sat at the piano, when I've done music, when I've been a part of a collaborative performance, or even sometimes just experience it, seen a performance, like I'm silent, I'm listening, or I'm playing, and what is happening in maybe just a few minutes is everything that I've been feeling. And I imagine everyone here in this room has felt that to some degree. So that is music. And so I'm so grateful to make that my career. But, something else we can all relate to, it's work though. It's getting up. It's a 9 to 5, so to speak. It's a hard work, and sometimes you don't want to do it. But it also, it's a job, but it has, unlike other jobs or careers, has a way to heal yourself, to heal others, to communicate where our words and our language fail us.
No? Go down. Or Jackie?
Well, I already know Nell's is going to be really, really good, so I'd rather go first. To me, music is just memories and moments. I think every song, whenever it plays, I'm always thinking back to, man, this reminds me of so-and-so, or this reminds me of when this happened. This makes me really sad because I remember this, or this makes me really happy because of this moment. So I think it all just ties back to different moments in my life.
I think that it is a privilege to live life doing something, making a living doing something that you love to do. That is just a privilege. I think a lot of creators, because it's hard out here, And it's very difficult. Entrepreneurship in itself is difficult, but being an artist, championing yourself as an artist, like that, it's just a difficult terrain. However, all things are hard. You just gotta choose your hard. It's hard to show up somewhere that you don't like every day too. So, for me, music is a tool. I think I'm an amazing producer, and I think I have made some amazing music, but I think that I'm really an orator. And I think music is my choice weapon that I get to use and yield as a sword. I don't know another thing that strikes as hard and as fast and as quickly and as swiftly as music. There are people love reading books. It takes time to read books. People even love watching TV, but even that takes some kind of decision to stay engaged. You can be in the grocery store and a tune comes on over the intercom, and now all of a sudden you're shopping differently. Happens to me every time I'm in Zara. I have to like catch myself. And so like music is literally fundamentally a tool, a weapon to be wielded at will. And so that's why it's so important to me. I love what it does as education for our kids and all of these things. But more importantly, I am trying to cover ground and take land and territory and take up space with music, because there's a lot of messaging. And before I sit and complain about the messaging that I don't like, I'm going to take up space saying the things that I do think need to be said. And so for me, music is a weapon. It's a literal tool.
Fantastic, all three. I've had some very, very good answers, including these three. I've had music as a weapon once before, actually. I've had got me through cancer. I've had stopped me killing myself. I had that once. And lots of, maintains my relationship with my family, all sorts of things. And it shows just how important it is, right? Like and I just, I thought we would end at that. Like, we can never take this for granted. And the way that you don't take this for granted is you build, not just builds more songs and more stories and more narrative and increase more artists in Houston. It's to keep building that on top of data, on top of evidence, and on top of a strong collective network, right? The one thing I have learned when I work with governments is the biggest excuse that a government will give you to not work with you is you're not asking them one thing. Now, we don't know what the music people are telling us. They're telling us half a dozen different things. So if they can't get organized, then why should we listen to them? I get that a lot. You guys are getting organized here, and that is, again, that is an incredible accomplishment and should be applauded, and hopefully is the first or next step in many more to develop Houston's music economy and ecosystem. So, round of applause for our amazing panelists. And handing back to Gracie.
Thank you so much, Shain, and hang tight because we do have some questions, I hope, from the audience. If you guys have been listening attentively, we can cover anything that Shain and the panelists have talked about and maybe want to deep dive for the next 15, 20 minutes or so. So who has the first question?
It's always the first one that's the hardest.
How y'all doing? My name is Mark Drew, and I'm an artist and producer here from Houston. Just want to say first, Gracie, you and your team do an amazing job.
Give it up for Gracie.
Yeah, absolutely. You all had some brilliant ideas tonight about like building a hub for, a safe space for musicians, right? And I've been to LA and other cities, and one thing I noticed more in other cities that are built around entertainment is how much of the business that these artists know. And when I work with artists out here, like sometimes the conversations get weird when I talk about splits when the time comes for that, because people don't know what they're like legally entitled to. So my question would be like, in conjunction with all your brilliant ideas, on as far as priorities, like where should something like that sit? Because I've been to the ASCAP convention and learned so much in a weekend, more than I've learned a lot here in Houston. And I would love to see more of that here.
That's a really good point. And Shain, to kind of like what you said about intellectual property, and people forget the property, people forget the business out of music business and just focus on the music. And I mean, a lot of it's been said here about education. I think that's one vehicle of our institutions, and something as down from high school, but our higher ed institutions pushing music business. But I can also see organizations like the one I represent and others, or businesses, creating opportunities for continued education in business. I don't know if that answered it, but yeah, we have that need, and I think between a lot of our organizations, we just like we can facilitate a venue, we can facilitate master classes, workshop, guest speakers of like, this is how you do, like, here's a crash course on boom, boom, boom.
Okay, and I mean, this is on the spot, but to keep going where you're at, I would love to see, this is maybe the right word, maybe not, I would love to see a union. I'd love to see it broken down. Genre doesn't make a lot of sense to me. More how you work. So instrumentalists, like rappers, like or songwriters. That makes more sense to me. But I love to see a union, and I love to see you have a membership and a card. And this card says that because I have this means that I have taken the time to be educated. Because I have this means that when you work with me, you can expect a certain level of professionalism. Because I have this says that I am connected to a bigger space of resource. I would love to see
Well,
like
we have that. That's my gig.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, I'm the president of our musicians union. I mean, I will say we can focus more on music business in classes, but I have been doing that. We've been offering a lot of networking events, master classes.
Where I get my card at?
And you know what? And actually, it's funny you say that. At our national convention this last year in Vegas, and this was a divided vote between our locals across the country, but I was 1,000% for it. We now represent DJs and rappers.
All right, yeah, let's make sure.
Because and I was like, Houston, hello, but and Chicago was another big local that was pushing it and arguing for it, and of course you had the other side who was like, and they were just thinking somebody's hitting play on an iPod, and that's going to be, they're the same as a concert violinist.
That's
like, no.
a no.
Oh, let me come tell them what it say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but can my association do more in workshops? Absolutely. But that is something, from my years in LA and New York, I respect and understand. I don't claim to be the best pianist when I lived in those markets, but I feel like I had a great understanding of the business that allowed me to navigate a career. And so yeah, there are resources, but we need to do more collectively as a city and our organization.
There's a couple of very, very simple things that can be done. So one is there are organizations like the Music Business Association or the MMF that already do road shows. I helped coordinate the music business one. Okay. So cities invite them to come. They did one in Miami. They did one in Huntsville, Alabama. They're based in Nashville, Music Business Association. That's one. MMF does, the Music Managers Forum does the same thing for managers. We are working on kind of a musician-focused conference in Dallas after South by Southwest. The idea is a Dallas music conference. No, you're saying boo. This is a promoter in Dallas has taken it upon himself to try to tackle that problem, and having essentially this for an entire day with more speakers. That's all. But speakers focused on registration, royalty administration, understanding your copyrights, understanding contracts, and there are, as you know, hundreds and hundreds of people that can do that. So there are different organizations. I think with the Music Advisory Board, and I'm happy to help, is to establish those relationships so that those types of things can be facilitated over time.
So let me add here, Shain. And I know some of you guys are already familiar with the Music Advisory Board that was established by the Office of Cultural Affairs, the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. And they were established in 2022 to enhance and support our music industry. So they are made up of 12 members, stakeholders in our music community that are still active, right? That are still doing business from different spaces in the music industry. And earlier today, you heard me introduce some of our board members, and they come from different spaces in the music industry. They are there as our front line to advise me in my position as music officer, our office, and future administrations. So when we set that up as an ordinance here for the city of Houston, what that means is that it's not going to go away. Yes. That is our city's, our office's investment in how much we care about Houston music. And
You codified it.
And so what it means is that last year when we began this work, and Shain, you touched on it earlier, is the best way to kind of bring people in is to remind us that we have so much music history here that needs to be celebrated. So our focus last year, as we worked in community with the board and folks, organizations, is have those conversations about preserving more landmarks, preserving or reminding people that they should continue to document and record all our history. And then thirdly, also talk about those mentorships between intergenerational artists. Right? There's a lot to learn, even if you're an older musician that may not be let's say, working in a digital world, right? So as we focused on that last year, I'm happy to announce that, we have been working on setting up a subcommittee that continues that work in preserving our music culture with our board chair, Flash Gordon Parks. This year, on the advice of the feedback that we got from the music community and the advice from the board members, our focus this year is music business development. So this tonight, y'all, is case in point. This is our first event as a call and response to that ask from the community. So we're doing that already. So I'm really happy to hear a lot about what you're saying. And I mean, trust me, there was it wasn't ad hoc that you guys are sitting up here. There's a reason why you're sitting next to Alex. You're sitting next to Jackie and Shain, So with that said, just happy to hear that, a lot of these connections, these dot connections, these dots are connecting in this room. So one more question, another question.
That was a great question, man.
I'll try to be fast so he can get his in. Hey guys, my name is Elva Trevino. I serve as a leader on different nonprofits with health and entertainment campaigns. We've been in front of the city council many times, just kind of jump starting to make some loud noise together. And with respect to Gracie and everything that they've done on our level in business and in nonprofit, what can we do now? If there was a 12-month game plan in the community of what we can do in activism, since that's something that a lot of us aren't afraid to speak up and to come together for. I know with the campaigns that we've initiated to get some attention and get city council and the mayor on board, not just here but outside of Houston, it's come down to getting leaders from business, nonprofit, the education sector, because it is all correlated. Mental health and wellness is affected by music. Anytime in history, the arts is what pulled people through. So going back to the messaging, we all have a different vantage point. So if we had a 12-month game plan within the community as leaders, what can we do now? What are a couple steps that you guys would say we can take initiative on now as we keep coming together, even outside of this event?
Very entertaining, engaging thing off the top of my head would be any school, high school specifically, or performing arts school, any school that has a standing audio engineering or, but it's bigger than that. That's going to always be my lens because that's what I do. But even bigger than that, we create a contest, and we say contest, but it's really just engagement across the board. And you pick the place. Pick the infrastructure place that we want everybody's eyes on, that we want everybody to see. Pick the infrastructural place. Create the contest amongst the high schools. Begin to create some unity and some synergy of we have these programs in these schools. I personally went to Media Tech down the street, kind of like in A-Leaf. And so the kids win whatever. audio engineering or musicians or whatever kids want to win as people that make music, and you have them work towards something, you document it. It ain't nothing if you ain't telling the narrative about it. It ain't nothing if people don't know the data about it. So you document it, and that's how you can make it a staple thing that every year this thing happens, and kids really get an opportunity at scholarship money. Schools get an opportunity at bragging rights. Like this, the camaraderie, the competitive nature of people is gonna kick in. You're gonna have moms showing up with signs and yelling, and you're gonna have school bands getting involved, and it can be like as big as you want it to be. But it hits at the infrastructure. You pick in the place. It hits at the unity across disciplines, across businesses, across schools, and to me, it's low-hanging fruit. I don't think the MLK parade is easy, but it's as easy as a staple thing like that.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Elva. Thank you, Elva, for your question. As I understand it, so from nonprofit events, like how I heard you, I would think like if you're hosting any event, you have a list, things to do, things to check off. Whether it's something as practical as like, okay, I need a lighting person, I need a camera person, audio visual, I need catering, I need a parking person. So, and you have a team that's budgeting, that's planning, a committee, et cetera, on one of those line items towards the top needs to be music and art. And so if that is prioritized, just as everything else is, like you can't have an event without a space, without, whatever the other conditions are. So prioritizing music and art, where are you sourcing that from? From Houston musicians, hopefully. And, you're paying them at a fair wage scale, hopefully. And so making that a priority. So let's say then that pushes your budget. Then like I tell, whether it's a private client or an executive, that's the cost of doing business. You want to do this, that's the cost. You don't expect a lighting person or a venue or a bar or a restaurant to necessarily give you their services for half. So why should a musician, or give them for nothing? Everyone else is like, no, my rate for catering for 100 people is going to be $20,000. That's what it is, period. For a 10-piece band for 3 hours, it's going to be X amount of dollars, period. So budgeting, prioritizing. So then if that's beyond your budget, then where are you sourcing that money from? Is that from civic sources? Is that from corporate sponsors, building those relationships? And kind of like Nell said, and having something consistent. Like, okay, I know every year I'm getting music from this school or from the Musicians Association or from this, or maybe you're getting a pool and you build a relationship and like, hey guys, I want to use y'all every year, whether it's an agency, whether it's an association, whether it's a school, and like, hey, here's our deal, here's our contract. I promise to use y'all every year at this much. Oh, cool, great. And so maybe then you build that relationship. Then they're probably going to work out a deal like any other vendor would. Okay, cool, we have this contract every year. Okay, I'm not going to necessarily gouge them. I'll do it for this much because I know I'm going to get it next year. Maybe next year I ask for 2, 3, 5% bump. But whatever, you've built a relationship. Like our association, I was telling some people here tonight, we're doing our 3rd annual jazz festival, and thanks to Gracie's comments, she came out to our festival last year. She was like, wow, y'all need a bigger space. And she was right. And so we built a great relationship with Eighth Wonder Brewery. And we're doing our festival, shameless plug here, April 14th at Eighth Wonder, Sunday afternoon. Come out and hear about 100 of the best jazz musicians in Houston for free. And help yourself to some of their great beer. So build relationships. I'm getting their space for free. They're getting music for free. We're scratching each other, front and back. I don't know. Sorry, that's
From a different perspective as well. Most cities that I've encountered have business groups where the CEOs or all tend to meet up and chat about what their priorities are.
Yeah, and I don't think being like a task force exists yet, right?
No.
Bridging those leaders.
I think, and also for it's incredible work that the Office of Cultural Affairs is doing in the music office, but the most successful cities that we have worked with have always had public-private partnerships to drive. So the city can't pay for everything. It's not sustainable, nor should the private sector pay for everything. So it's, and especially in a city that is really focused on attracting skilled workers, I would say that music culture is a terrific workforce development tool. So how can we organize a conversation with the directors of the large employers to get them to understand that a small amount of investment from them into this work can be a significant bump on their bottom line because they're going to be able to attract and retain better quality workers.
Shane, may I add 2 cents? And there was something on a previous topic made me think of this earlier. You know, our executive, corporate, civic leaders aren't going to do something most of the time because of a heartfelt conviction. You know,
We need data.
Yeah, we're not going to pull them at the heartstrings. It's the bottom line. And yeah, maybe they may spin it and like, look at what we're doing for the community. Yeah, fine. If they want to spin it like that, good for them. But where they're winning is maybe that marketing or they look good, you know. But essentially, they want a bottom line equivalency. They want a payback. Or sometimes they just simply want a tax write-off. I mean, when you make certain tiers, at a certain tier, you have to give away your money to someone, to somewhere, or else you're giving it to Uncle Sam. So if you're making whatever, well into 7 digits, you're going to have to give away, you know, maybe close to 6 digits. And so who are you going to give it to? You know, so why not give it to an organization? Why not give it to a cause so they can say, wow, look at what I'm doing for the city. Aren't I a good person or a great organization? No, they want that tax break. So.
Yep.
Absolutely. How's everybody doing? I'm not as smooth as Nail on the mic, but you know what I'm saying?
Nobody is.
Anybody is.
Right, I just want to say, Shane, this is brilliant. Gracie, this is brilliant, and thank y'all for having me. My name is Rags Anthony, and I basically was hired by the city of Houston in 2020 to do a jingle for the city of Houston. Quick story, when I got the call, I was sitting in the house, and my father was in the hospital dying of lupus. They had already stopped the visitation because of COVID. And so I was just looking for different ways to just be creative. And so when I got this call, I ended up doing the jingle and ended up being on every radio station in the city of Houston, which is one of the prayers, thank you. It's one of the prayers that I had, you know, for my father to just be able to see my music everywhere. So ever since that day, I just feel like it was a life-changing experience, not only the check, but the doors that it opened. So I will say it was a life-changing check. I took that money, and the first thing that I wanted to do was a give back. So I did a give back, which is called the I Am Blessed Give Back, and we are in our 5th year of doing this give back. And what we do is go into these different schools, and we ask kids the question, who are you? And we give them a vision board, and we let them put on this vision board pictures that depict who they think they are. And in the center of it, it says, I am. And so one of the songs, I'm a musician, one of the songs that I put out was called I Am Blessed. I invented this shoe because I wanted to allow the fans and the people that supported me to benefit from supporting me, if that makes sense to y'all. So basically when you buy this shoe, you get a revenue of the streams of the songs that spins. Now, how I use this to interact with the community is we bring these kids in and allow them to create their own shoe. They're learning the music business and the infrastructure. Because like you say, we leave out the word business all the time, but it's a business. Like, people get messed over all the time. So my question is, I have 2 questions. One is, I've been coming out of pocket like every year by myself. How can I collaborate with the city of Houston so that y'all can help me do this on a bigger scale? And two is, my second question is, Nell, I need a beat this. I love your beats. I was wondering why you so cool. I had no idea that was you when I walked in and shit, but you super swagged out. I love your beats, and I would like to get a beat this.
I appreciate it, man.
And that's all I had to say. Appreciate you.
I think question two is, well, I think this kind of event and having, but this is important, and I've seen this in dozens and dozens and dozens of places. It's literally knowing the human being you need to talk to, right? And I've learned being usually one step removed is from anyone that you would ever need to talk to. And it always starts with someone like Gracie's. It's like, how can you collaborate with the city? Well, potentially apply to join the board in future when there's elections, to join the board, and just kind of, and have these kind of brainstorming sessions to figure out, okay, what are the strategic plans of the music board? Well, it's to grow the music industry. So, man, you've made shoes and linked them to music, which is something I've never seen before. So maybe there's a potential educational opportunity where you can tell your story in a structured way that the office can support and go from there, right?
And one
Yeah,
last,
man, it's very cool.
one last thing I'd like to add is that, although yes, we occasionally have folks that we recruit when there are vacancies on the board, but that's not to stop you from this, working with us in every step of the way. So, yeah, we welcome that. So, next question, I have a couple, folks here.
You can reach me at producebyNell.com.
Can I respond to your question? Sorry, tell me your name again. Anthony. Just try to keep it quick. I mean, that's great that you're pursuing a city, but and this is one of the things about doing things solo. We are competing, and you have to think of yourself as an organization, as a business, as a collective, even if it's a one-man job. So in that effect, don't limit yourself to just one organization, be it the city. Houston, and I think our previous mayor was a big advocate for this, has a lot of grant opportunities, HAA and some others. So hit them all up, and you're not going to score all of them, but if you can get a few, that's where you can get some resources. And as I said, my organization now, I'm not sure what you do exactly musically, but I'd love to chat with you afterwards. We have grant funds too. I'd love to support what you're doing, because one thing that I'm trying to do within our organization is not, of course I represent all musicians, but I want to really diversify that pool of musicians. Our symphony players, they're doing all right. Not that I don't care about them, but they have a 6-figure salary, and they play, 9 months out of the year at Jones Hall. They're doing okay, and they earned it. They're brilliant musicians. But how about the independent musicians like you, and musicians who don't necessarily do a traditionally conservatory style of music, but have just as much merit, have just as much to say, have spent the same 10,000 hours refining your craft. How can we get you, get you to where you need to go. So yeah, let's connect.
A lot of the stuff that I was running into was people were like, you don't have a traditional nonprofit, because I just been coming out of pocket. So it's like, all right, so now I'm getting my paperwork, but I feel like a lot of people was just overlooking the fact that I just genuinely care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm outside.
And that's the reality. We've all faced it. There's going to be slam doors, but there are open doors, and like the people here. So let's.
And what I heard was you wanted scalability and you wanted visibility. Both of those things can come with just one shift of how you present yourself and your narrative to whatever platforms you use to do that. So yes, partnership, but you also got to move while people are saying no. And I think probably I think probably the chief thing that you could do like today is to make sure your narrative is tight, so that it's easy to digest to the people, so that what are you asking me for? Okay, cool, you can have that, or no, I don't want to give you that. But like people can like easily digest whatever it is, the narrative.
Like
it
Shane
is.
said, like a clear answer,
Yes.
or elevator pitch. Like if somebody puts you on the spot right now, what do you do in 30 seconds? Boom. And something that, again,
I struggle with
another
that.
word from Shane translates. You can't talk, music theory or engineering, music engineering, mumbo jumbo.
Speaking the language.
Yeah, you need to speak their language of whether it's dollars and cents or, bodies in a building or whatever it is.
One last thing, I also want everybody in here to know that I just got a new content space, and all of y'all are welcome to any type of event that y'all want to put on. It's on the southeast side, not too far from Reliant. It's new again, but all of y'all are welcome. I'll give y'all my card at the end of.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Am I next? Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Claudia De Vasco, the new managing director and CEO of Miller Outdoor Theater. Does everyone know Miller? I feel like growing up in
we know
Houston-
Miller. Come on
I
now.
want to explain to Shane what Miller is because I think it's actually pretty exciting. I don't think folks know that we are the only venue of its kind in the entire country. It's a full performing arts venue that is entirely free all year long and publicly subsidized by the government, both the state of Texas and Houston. And we present local and international touring acts, musicians, dancers, theater, but mostly music is what our venue is. And it's pretty special. It's the reason I came back from having worked in LA too and other spots to now run this theater. And my question has changed a little bit. Shane, I have a question for you, but it really has to do with the specifics of what Houston is. So Houston has been named by several entities, The Economist, New York Times, Just the Country, that we are the most diverse city in the United States. And the reason that we are the most diverse city, even over LA and New York, is because of how integrated we are, which is what makes us special, but also provides some challenges. And even though I spent most of my career out in LA dealing with those challenges, now coming back home to where I grew up, it's really evident to me that one of the issues that I am finding is this idea of converging cultures, both of American-born diverse people like myself, who's Mexican-American but born in Houston, Texas, and also a city that is made up of foreign-born citizens and folks that work here because it is such an international city. It means that we all share this diversity of values, which unfortunately sometimes doesn't come with an appreciation for music or the performing arts as an industry and business. And so when we talk about how we start, implementing education in the school systems, how we start getting folks to understand, oh, this is important, I go back to something you had said, Shane, which it is about storytelling and it is about the narrative. And first of all, I think helping our different cultures understand the priority of or the importance of this work, both music and the performing arts in general, as a business. And I'm curious because I think, really when we talk about storytelling and narrative, it comes down to marketing and how we are spending the money to tell that story. So I am very curious to hear from your international experience. Now, I know internationally it can be tricky because in Europe, a lot of countries, even though they are not, they are diverse for us because they're not our culture, are not diverse in and of themselves. So the folks in, for example, my husband who worked in the Netherlands spoke about their cultural identity and how it's pretty centralized in mostly, for the most part, not that there aren't diverse people there, but there's sort of a cultural understanding there in a way that we don't find in Houston, that I think we're up against and fighting all the time. Who are we?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, so the fundamental challenge that music faces, and this is a cultural thing, a tribal thing, a religious thing, and an economic thing, is in most countries in the world, it is not a business. This is not a value judgment or being critical. I'm just telling you how it is. So there's 195 countries in the United Nations, 195. Of those 195, 108 of them do not have or lack transparent music copyright infrastructure. Okay, including some of the world's most populous, Bangladesh, Nigeria, right? 2 countries with amazing music, by the way. Nigeria, especially for me. But that's just me personally. And there's also amazing music. But this is because of also this history, religion, culture, just the way we grow up. It's all sorts of things. It is a generational challenge to fix that. And that trickles down into how our culture and where we're from, we view music. Some of us just view music through a cultural lens, and that's totally fine. And then when you compound the fact that music is really complicated, that it's not a point of sale business, you can make money in 30, 40, 50 different ways. It mainly deals with things we can't see, and we suck at dealing with things we can't see as human beings. You can't see copyright, right? It's when you build that on top of one another, I do believe that it creates this kind of stack of challenges where articulating music as a business, you're starting from a very difficult place where when you articulate it as a business, it can be misconstrued to think that it is anti-cultural or anti-tribal or anti-community. I come across this a lot. So separating the two is like my life's work, I'll be honest with you. It's what I do every day. My day job right now is working mainly like with the United Nations and global governments to try to explain music as a business. But that's because this is how it has been for so long. But if you think about the commercial music industry really is no more than 80 years old, 90 years old. It's, we kind of lose sight of how young we are. So I think that the change will come through diversity. So I think cities like Houston or Toronto, where I grew up, I think is the most multicultural city in the world. I think Toronto. And it's up there with Houston. And London is diverse in a different way, but it's super diverse. I think that's where the solution's going to come. But it won't come unless we break that initial mold of saying music is an economy. Full stop. It also is culture, tribal, religious, community. Fine, but it is an economy. And I think that is a foundational challenge that we all face. And it manifests itself differently in different countries, but I'm guessing in Houston, through the confluence of people from different places who look different, meeting each other, seeing music in a different way, it makes it more difficult in that sense. So that's my thinking around it, and I'm working on it. So the way we're solving the problem is literally to show people the money. That's it. It's the music economy, and just to put it into perspective, the global value of music copyright last year was $41.5 billion US. Every song ever written by anyone ever at any time. Okay? Ever. 41.5 billion US. Starbucks is worth 106 billion. So every song ever written that's ever been listened to is about a third of Starbucks, a little more than a third of one coffee company. And whatever we think about Starbucks, we could probably find another coffee company. Probably can't find another global value of music copyright. So we have so much work to do, but it's because of that foundational issue of a lack of understanding that this is a business, that this is an economy and how the economy functions, which translates into everything, into the way streaming works, into artists being taken advantage of and asked to play for free, into all sorts of things. But it starts with that foundational problem. And I think I'll be dead by the time it's solved, but I'm going to give it a go.
Thank you, Shain. And so for the sake of time, I think we're
that
going
was
to
a
do
long answer.
two more questions so that we also have some time to network afterwards. Will you please tell us your name?
Hi, my name is Misty Staunton. I'm a planner for the city of Houston for the last 17 years. One thing that I wanted to say is that you keep going back to data, especially I just read the first 10 pages of your book, and you go back to data and how it relates to policy. As a planner, what I've seen in communities is that when we go there to get the data and to get the feedback of what it is that they want in their community, we're missing two people. That's usually the musicians, because usually they're renters and they don't think that maybe they belong in the community, but yet they do, and they're not showing up to the community meetings to give their input on things. And then the second is developers who are either rehabbing a building for music venues. And so in my office, time and time again, we have the developers come and say, they don't want us here. What can we do? How can you help us? and or musicians saying, I can't live here anymore, and I need to because I perform in this area. How would you say, what would you tell the city as a planner? What can we do to get these people out so we can get the data to change the policies?
Zoning? I joke.
New York City has artist housing in Midtown. I don't think that's available in Houston, is it?
No.
And yeah, and it's a shame because I mean, Houston, comparatively to other major cities, is still very economical. It's economical. There's a caveat to that. It's economical if you've just relocated from California or New York. If you're Houston homegrown, it's not economical in the loop, at least, unless you're living in a little like garage apartment or something. But for most musicians, you probably want to be inside the 610 loop to be connected to other creatives, to be connected to businesses. And so it would be great to see the city budget that, prioritize that, like cities like New York has. I mean, in New York City, there's a tower literally a block away from like Lincoln Center that you can afford to live there for dirt cheap. I mean, it's an application, a waiting list, whatever, and then you get it and you hold on to it. So like, yeah, it'd be great to see if there was like a tower or a complex or something in Midtown or in Montrose or in the Heights or in Edo, where it's just like, okay, this is artist housing that's subsidized partially by the city, by the state, federally, whatever, and you apply. What are you doing creatively? Okay, cool. Here's a 1-year lease. I don't know.
I don't have an answer, but I have perspective. As an artist, being an artist or a musician, whatever you are, this is one of the few career choices or paths where you are everything. So unless you are signed to a major or a very, very good independent label, you are everything. And so, yes, I desperately need housing, but I also got to make sure my song's registered the right way, and I got to make sure that I turned in this part of the project. And it is extremely overwhelming. So not an answer, but a perspective. This is why I like almost leapt when you said that you literally have established the thing that that I positioned. Because to me, it's in those kind of organizations where it's like, hey, artist, hey, creative. I know you got 10,000 things, but don't forget over at such and such. Thank you so much. Over at such and such, they're talking about artist housing. So I don't have an answer, but just a perspective that we are literally wearing. And I know everybody is, right? But a business has its business department, its financial. An artist has that person, and maybe they mama, and maybe they best friend, or they amazing spouse that go everywhere with them and do everything. Thank you, baby. Like we just are capacity overload, and so and it's not even a competition of like of recreation. I don't have any more fat to trim. Like I'm not doing taking trips. Everything that I do is the things that I have to do, and so you're asking me to prioritize yet another thing, and so it has to be made plain to me in a very like simple way to digest so that I can do it very quickly. That's just perspective.
I would say planner to planner, if you've already identified that that's a group that you're missing out on, you need to meet them where they're at. Go to a space that might not be convenient to you, but it's convenient to them, but also open up the avenues for them to engage at the level that they have the capacity and want to engage at. Whether it's just reading your post, reading your flyer, or whether it's providing feedback, but it needs to be somewhere that they're comfortable and want to participate at.
And I want to just say thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
I think, Nicole, did you invite? Yes, thank you to our director, Nicole Irvin, for making this connection. I really appreciate you being here.
There are things that you can do. I'm not sure how they would work within the context of Houston's planning code, but there are planning instruments that exist in lots of other places that including in Texas, that provide more definition of certain spaces as much as one can to centralize them more as a specific land use. But the most important thing we've seen is having music data that can be overlaid on your GIS or your other systems, so you know where everything is, you have economic data around it. to help identify, where, for example, where there are what we would call cultural deserts, which exist like food deserts, right? It's having that type of data and making sure that the data speaks to each other. Like a map of venues is meaningless unless it is properly overlaid onto the data that the city of Houston uses. But we can talk about that after. There's lots of planning instruments that theoretically can be used here, but depending on the context and how things work.
So one last thing I want to add to that is, according to the Texas Music Office, last year, the music business and music education both directly accounted for just over 10.8 billion, with a B, billion, in annual economic activity for the state. Imagine if we had those numbers for Houston.
And now you have the venue rebate program here,
Correct.
right? Which is that's a world-leading initiative that Texas is leading. Does everyone know about it? It's okay. So it was passed last year, I believe.
Correct.
So Texas. So essentially, if you get defined as a live music venue, which there's certain characteristics you have to meet. You have to have a stage. You have to prioritize live music, DJ, doesn't matter, and open a certain period of time, and so on. And you can get a rebate of up to $100,000 back on your alcohol tax by so long as you program, I think it's 3, could be 4 live music events per week that qualify. So, and it's just a rebate. So if you're a venue, even if you're a restaurant, you have to obviously apply for the exemption, but that's kind of incredible. And it's only in Texas.
So I think I'm going to take
State Music Office, they're really good.
Yeah, and if you guys want more information about that, I can also direct y'all after when we network. Last question, for the sake of time, let's just keep it brief.
So I started an all-female business here in Houston. So what are your opinions or thoughts about being so male-dominated in the music industry here? Whether you're doing whatever music you do, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion that facts are facts. It's male dominated. That just is what it is. And I don't like to speak about it disregarding that. But what I also say, it's never been a better time to be a woman. So two things can be true. There are things that we're still fighting against. But you started an all-female business. That is not a thing that women, 2 decades ago, could have done. Maybe as I would say easily in quotations that you were able to do it. So a lot of it is just the same thing that you would tell any artist: find your people, be with your people, do the things that you and your people want to do, and then connect with other people that it makes sense to. Sometimes we're asking for permission to be in spaces that, number one, we don't need to be in. Or we're asking for permission to do things that I don't need your permission to do. Tell me how you're stopping me. Okay, so I'm deciding that I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do these things with these people. And when you decide you want to stop me, then I'll maneuver around you like I've been maneuvering out here because I have to anyway. So I would say my advice is more about an attitude than how to do certain. Now, there are certain places and things that you want to be based on your career where you have to go, and it's extremely male dominated. And to that, for women, I say always use your discernment, always be safe. There is not a dollar that's worth your safety. Decide what's okay for you. Different women have different objectives and different things that they're going to be able to live with. 20 years from now, I'll be okay if I never had a Grammy. 20 years from now, I'm not going to be okay if I'm estranged from my children or my husband. So just decide what is okay for you, and then do your thing. But I would say the disposition is more of an attitude. It's never been a better time to be a woman. The companies are throwing money at, women, diversity, we love you. Yes, I'll take it. It's never been a better time to be a woman. Mm-hmm.
Nell is completely right on that. I would add the word intentionality. Mm-hmm. So whatever you're doing creatively, in music and business, you have to have a goal and an intention. And so you have right there a product that's clearly defined, an all-women's band. And so that's a brand, that's an identity, that's an intention that you clearly set out to do. And as Nell said, there are businesses, there are organizations who want who are looking, they don't want to just throw their money up into the air and see where it lands. They want to put their money into something very intentional and for every number of intentions across the gamut. And so they were like, yes, this is what we want to get behind because it's consistent with our brand, with what we celebrate. And coincidentally, my organization, we did an event. Is that rain? No. That was just last Sunday of celebrating International Women's Month, and we did an event again at Eighth Wonder, but over 30 musicians launching our Houston Women's Chamber Orchestra, but then had another couple of groups. But yeah, I mean, our industry is male dominated, as Nell said. It's a fact, you know. But there's, as I was also sharing earlier, you know, our industry is the only one that unapologetically gets away with discriminating in the sense that it's okay to say, yeah, I want a female this and a male that, and I want a musician of this race to play that instrument. And like, I mean, our industry is kind of a casting, for better or worse, as progressive as we are as people. That's something that I think we've all seen, experienced, but I would really run with that intention that you have, because that is something very specific that people will want to invest in.
I will say, and this is like a huge reduction, and I know we run pressed on time. It's a huge reduction, but money only comes from two places. It either come from the people, or it either come from established businesses and sectors. And so a lot of time as an independent artist or somebody who's coming up, you know, against all of the odds, it makes us internally rebellious. And so we immediately have a disposition against the structures or the businesses or, you know, the man at B. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't find the word. The establishment at B. But the establishment be where them big dollars be at. You know what I mean? Like, the people love you, but the people are fickle. Like, people are very fickle, and sometimes it takes some time to find your group and like how they'll support you. And so I would also say is tame some of that like rebellion and tame some of that attitude. Speak the language that the establishment speaks when you need to cash in on that opportunity. People are using people every day. Just make sure you're getting what you need out of the deal.
Thank you very much. So I think on that note, I just want to get us into some opportunities where we can kind of connect with one another. And, you know, we've started some conversations, some really important conversations here tonight. And, you know, as you talk to and meet new people tonight, or even after here, I want you to start thinking about those action items. You know, it's good to have discussion, conversations, but, you know, start thinking about what those key investments and policies that can support our city's music, sustainability and growth. So I welcome you to find me, talk to me. Also, if I haven't, I introduced Director Irvin earlier. Also reach out to her. She also has a lot to share in that space as well. Do you want to say a few things? Yeah.
Just really quickly, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to thank Shain and this panel so much, right? It's Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, it's St. Patrick's Day, it's all the things. Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your attitude. It is appreciated. I also want to thank all of you in this space, in this room, because we don't move forward without you, right? I have lots of ideas, but I am not a musician, right? I have, and we depend upon you and your voice in our office, in our city. We have invested, and we want to continue to invest, but we need your help, and we seek it. We ask that you seek us and that you participate. I'll briefly give one example of one of the things that we did really early prior to bringing Gracie on board, which was we made a commitment to participate in Make Music Day. And people thought, well, that sounds really basic and simple, and really, what's the value of that? The reason we decided to participate in it was trifold. One, Houston is geographically big, right? And it is an event that happens every summer solstice that doesn't have to happen in a centralized location. It can happen in your neighborhood. It can happen in your backyard. It can happen at your local business by investing in live music. Number two, people didn't understand what the rules and regulations were as it relates to busking in Houston. By saying that we were doing this event annually, it helped the city to clarify our rules and begin to help us to explain and describe what those rules were to everyone else. And then thirdly, we are an international city, and this is an international celebration. So it continues to bring those ties together. So I encourage you, if you didn't participate in the last 3 years in Make Music Day, that you do that this year, and however it makes sense for you in your practice and in your community, that you join us in that space. And then finally, we have a dynamic music advisory board. These are individuals that have said, we are not only doing work in our space and our practice, but we are volunteering our time to help advance the industry and the community. And so those individuals are here and are your voice. And I actively encourage you to get to know them, value and appreciate where that is, and how we can continue to advance the work. So that's it, there we go.
Again, thank you guys. Thanks to Shain Shapiro, Sound Diplomacy, our distinguished panelists, Alex, LaNell, Jackie.
Book is for sale.
Yes, and that was my next thing, is that if you are interested, you can chat with Shain over in the storefront where the book is being sold by Class Bookstore. So many thanks to Dara and David for facilitating that. But stick around, we do have the bar open. And we've got DJ Good Grief on the decks, ones and twos that is gonna provide some music for us. So hopefully you have some time to stick around. And many thanks to David and Maya from Heist and Off the Record for hosting us here. Really, really, truly appreciate it. So yeah, without further ado, let's mingle.